Hello. I hope you're comfortable. If you're not, maybe take a second to adjust your pillow. There's no rush. I'll wait. Okay. Tonight, I thought I'd talk to you about Roman history, not because it's particularly exciting, though parts of it are, but because I think there's something calming about knowing that people 2,000 years ago worried about a lot of the same things we worry about today, like taxes, and whether they left the oven on, and what their neighbors thought of them. I got interested in Roman history last fall when I found a book at a yard sale. It was called The Daily Life of Ancient Rome, and it cost 50 cents. The woman running the sale said it belonged to her late husband, who was a high school Latin teacher. She said he used to read passages from it at breakfast. She smiled when she said that, but it was the kind of smile that made me feel like I should buy the book, so I did. I brought it home and set it on my nightstand. And for about 2 weeks, I just looked at it before bed. The cover had a picture of the Colosseum on it, but not the way it looks now, all crumbled. It showed what historians think it looked like when it was new, with all the arches intact and people in togas walking around. There was even a hot dog vendor, or I guess the Roman equivalent, maybe a roasted dormouse vendor. Romans ate dormice. We'll get to that. The thing about Roman history is that it happened so long ago that it feels almost make-believe, like a story someone invented, but then you remember that it was real. Those were real people walking around in sandals, complaining about the weather, falling in love, getting their hearts broken, eating meals, having arguments with their fathers. Marcus Aurelius, he was an emperor and also a philosopher. He wrote in his journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think," which is an intense thing to write in your journal. I mostly write things like buy milk or call mom back. But I think what he meant was that life is short and we should be kind and purposeful. Which is good advice, though it makes me anxious if I think about it too long before bed, so usually I think about aqueducts instead. Romans built aqueducts to carry water from the mountains into their cities. Some of them are still standing. There's one in France called the Pont du Gard that's about 2,000 years old, and you can still walk across it. I saw a documentary about it once. The narrator had a British accent, and he kept saying extraordinary, which made it feel more extraordinary. The Romans didn't invent the aqueduct, but they perfected it. They figured out the exact angle the water needed to flow. Just a gentle slope, about 1 inch of drop every 300 feet. Too steep and the water would erode the channel. Too flat and it would sit there and grow algae. I think about that sometimes, when I'm adjusting the garden hose in my backyard. The Romans were out there doing trigonometry with stone and water, and I'm just trying to keep the spray from hitting me in the face. But that's the thing about Romans. They were very practical. They wanted things to work. They'd conquer a new territory, and the first thing they'd do, after the conquering part, was build roads and aqueducts and public baths. They believed that civilization was something you built literally with your hands and stones and engineering. There's something comforting about that, I think. The idea that you can look at a problem, like this city needs water, and solve it in a way that lasts 2,000 years. Most things I build fall apart by Tuesday. Last spring I tried to build a birdhouse. I got the wood from the hardware store and the plans from a library book. The book said it was a beginner-friendly project, which I now think was a lie. The birdhouse turned out lopsided. The roof didn't sit flush, and one of the walls had a gap in it. I put it up anyway, on a pole in the backyard, because I figured even a bad birdhouse is better than no birdhouse. No birds moved in all summer, but in October, late October, right before the first frost, I saw a chickadee fly in and out of it a few times. I don't know if it was living there or just checking it out. Like when you tour an apartment you can't afford, but you go anyway because it's fun to imagine. I wanted to tell the chickadee, I know it's not much, but I built it with my hands, and that counts for something. But I think the chickadee could tell. Birds know. The Romans would have built a better birdhouse. They'd probably have built a bird aqueduct too, some system to deliver seeds directly to every bird in the province. Very efficient people. The Roman Republic started in 509 BC, which is hard to imagine because that's before Jesus, before even the idea of BC and AD existed. Nobody at the time knew they were living in 509 BC. They probably had their own calendar. They did, actually. It was based on the founding of Rome, which they said happened in 753 BC. So to them, it was the year 244 AUC, Abi Urbe Condita, from the founding of the city. I like that, measuring time from the moment your city began. It makes time feel less abstract and more like something you're all building together. The Republic lasted about 500 years, which is twice as long as the United States has existed. That's a long time for any government to last, especially one where people argued constantly, which they did. The Senate was famous for arguing. Senators would give speeches that lasted hours, and if someone disagreed with you, they'd really let you have it. There was a senator named Cato the Elder who ended every speech with "Carthage must be destroyed," no matter what the speech was about. Imagine if someone at a town council meeting ended every comment with "the Applebee's on Route 9 must be destroyed." You'd remember them. Carthage was Rome's big rival. They fought 3 wars, called the Punic Wars, which lasted on and off for over a century. The first war was about Sicily. The second war was when Hannibal crossed the Alps with elephants, which is one of the most famous things anyone's ever done. The third war was basically Rome deciding to destroy Carthage completely, which they did in 146 BC. It's sad when you think about it. Carthage was a great city. They were incredible sailors and traders. They had their own culture and history, and then one day it was just gone. The Romans burned it, and allegedly salted the earth so nothing would grow there, though historians now think that part might be a myth. People like the drama of salting the earth. It's more memorable than just saying they knocked down the buildings and left. Still, the idea stuck, and that's something too. Sometimes the story we tell about history is more powerful than what actually happened. I had a history teacher in high school, Mr. Pasternak, who said that history is just a long chain of people making decisions, and each decision leads to another decision, and eventually you get to us. He said it like it was a comforting thought, but I remember feeling a little overwhelmed, like, what if one of those people had made a different decision? What if Hannibal had turned back before the Alps? What if someone had convinced Cato the Elder to relax about Carthage? Would I still be here, in my living room, talking to you about Romans? Probably, but maybe not. And that's the thing about history. It's all connected, but it's also random. A lot of it comes down to weather and luck and who happened to be standing in the right place at the right time. Julius Caesar almost didn't become Julius Caesar. When he was a young man, he was kidnapped by pirates. They held him for ransom, 20 talents of silver, which was a lot of money. Caesar told them they were undervaluing him and that they should ask for 50 talents instead. Can you imagine? He's a hostage and he's negotiating up. The pirates thought he was funny. He spent 38 days with them, and the whole time he told them that once he was free, he'd come back and crucify them all. They laughed. They thought he was joking. He wasn't joking. After he was ransomed, Caesar raised a fleet, went back, captured the pirates, and crucified them, though he did have their throats cut first as a mercy because he said they'd treated him well. That's Romans for you. Ruthlessly efficient, but with a code. I wonder sometimes what it was like to live back then, when things felt more direct. If you had a problem with someone, you could challenge them to a duel, or give a speech in the forum, or, I don't know, send a strongly worded letter via a guy on a horse. Now we just send emails and wait. I sent an email to my health insurance company 4 months ago, and I'm still waiting for a response. I don't think the Romans had health insurance. If you got sick, you either got better or you didn't. Though they did have doctors, some of them were pretty good. They could set bones and perform surgeries, and even do cataract operations, which is impressive. They also believed in the 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that illness was caused by an imbalance of these humours. So sometimes the cure was to drain some blood out of you, which seems counterintuitive, but they were working with the information they had. We do the same thing now. Future people will probably look back at us and say, "Can you believe they used to treat cancer with poison and radiation?" And future people will say, Can you believe they used to get cancer? But I don't know. Maybe some things don't change. Maybe people will always get sick and always try to fix it with whatever tools they have. That's kind of noble, when you think about it. The Roman Empire started in 27 BC when Augustus became the first emperor. His real name was Octavian, but he changed it to Augustus, which means the illustrious one. Good branding. Augustus was Julius Caesar's adopted son and heir, though they were actually great-nephew and great-uncle. Caesar adopted him in his will, which Octavian found out about after Caesar was assassinated. Imagine getting that news your great-uncle was murdered. Also, you're his son now. Also, you're in charge of Rome. Good luck. Octavian was only 18 years old. He spent the next 13 years fighting a civil war against Mark Antony and Cleopatra. And he won, and then he ruled for 40 years and turned Rome into an empire. He said he found Rome, a city of brick, and left it a city of marble, which is a nice way of saying he did a lot of construction projects. He also established the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, which lasted about 200 years. That's 2 centuries of relative stability, which is pretty good for an empire. There were still wars on the edges, but if you lived in the center, in Rome or one of the big cities, life was mostly peaceful. You could travel from Britain to Egypt without worrying too much about getting killed by bandits. Roads were safe. Trade was good. People built things and made art and wrote poems. It's easy to romanticize it, no pun intended. But it was also a slave society, and most people were poor, and if you said the wrong thing about the emperor, you could be exiled or executed. So it wasn't perfect. No society is. But still, 200 years of peace, that's something. I think about peace a lot. Not world peace. That feels too big, like trying to drink the ocean. But small peace. The kind you feel on a Sunday morning when you wake up and realize you don't have to be anywhere. Or the kind you feel when you're sitting on your porch in the evening and the sun is going down and the air smells like cut grass and someone a few houses down is grilling and you can hear the faint sound of a baseball game on someone's radio. That's peace. Romans had that too, I think. They had gardens and dinner parties and bathhouses where they'd sit around and talk. They loved talking. They had a whole genre of literature called symposium, which just means a conversation, usually over wine. Pliny the Younger, he was a writer and lawyer, wrote letters to his friends describing his daily routine. He'd wake up early, do some work, take a bath, have lunch, take a nap, go for a walk, have dinner, listen to someone read poetry or philosophy aloud, and then go to bed. That sounds pretty good to me. Pliny also wrote about his uncle, Pliny the Elder, who died during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. Pliny the Elder was a naturalist and admiral, and when Vesuvius erupted, he sailed toward it to help evacuate people. He got too close and died from the fumes. That's the thing about Romans. Even the scholars were tough. Pliny the Elder wrote a 37-volume encyclopedia called Natural History, and also commanded a fleet, and also rushed toward an erupting volcano to save people. I once drove past a car accident and didn't stop because I figured someone else already called 911. I still think about that sometimes. Mount Vesuvius buried the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum under ash and pumice. For about 1,700 years, they were just gone, forgotten. Then, in the 1700s, people started digging and found them perfectly preserved. You can go there now and walk the streets and see the houses and the graffiti on the walls. Romans loved graffiti. They wrote things like I made bread and Marcus loves Spendusa and Successus was here. People haven't changed. There's something haunting about Pompeii, though. When archaeologists poured plaster into the cavities left by the bodies, they created casts of the people at the moment they died. You can see them in the museum. A man covering his face, a dog straining against its chain, a child curled up. It's hard to look at for too long. But it also makes them real in a way that dates and battles don't. These weren't just Romans. They were people. They had bad days and good days. They got annoyed at their neighbors. They loved their dogs. They wrote their names on walls, and then one day a mountain exploded and that was it. I don't know what the lesson is there. Maybe just that life is fragile and we should be kind to each other while we can. Or maybe there's no lesson. Maybe it's just sad. The Roman Empire lasted a long time. Over 1,000 years if you count the Byzantine Empire, which was the eastern half that kept going after the western half fell. The western half fell in 476 AD when the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer. Romulus Augustulus was only 16 years old. He'd been emperor for less than a year. Odoacer pensioned him off and sent him to live in a villa in Campania, which doesn't sound too bad, honestly. Better than being crucified by pirates. But that was the end. After over 1,000 years, Rome wasn't an empire anymore. It was just a city. Historians have been arguing ever since about why Rome fell. Some say it was barbarian invasions. Some say it was economic collapse. Some say it was moral decay. Some say it was lead poisoning from the pipes. Some say it was all of the above. I think maybe empires are just hard to maintain. They get big and complicated, and eventually something goes wrong and they fall apart. It's entropy. Things fall apart. That's what they do. But the ideas last. Roman law is the basis for most legal systems in Europe. Latin is the root of the Romance languages. French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian. The Roman alphabet is what we're using right now. Roman architecture influenced every government building in Washington, D.C. You can't walk through a city without seeing Rome somewhere. I was in Chicago once for a wedding. I had some time before the rehearsal dinner, so I walked around downtown. I ended up in front of a building with big columns and a triangular pediment like a Roman temple. Turns out it was a bank. I stood there for a while, looking at it, thinking about how banks want to look like temples because temples make you think of stability and permanence and trust, and how Rome wanted the same things. They built things to last, and a lot of them did. There's a building in Rome called the Pantheon. It was built in 126 AD as a temple to all the gods. It has a huge dome with a hole in the top, an oculus, that lets in light. When it rains, the rain comes through the hole and falls onto the floor, and there are drains to carry it away. The Pantheon is still standing. You can go inside. People have been going inside for almost 2,000 years. I haven't been, but I've seen pictures. The light coming through the oculus looks like a spotlight, like the gods are about to walk on stage. I'd like to go someday. I'd like to stand in there and feel what it's like to be in a place that old, to know that people stood in the same spot 2,000 years ago and looked up at the same dome. Maybe I'd feel connected to them, or maybe I'd just feel small. Both seem okay. Romans believed in a lot of gods. Jupiter, the king of the gods. Juno, his wife. Mars, the god of war. Venus, the goddess of love. Neptune, Minerva, Apollo, Diana, they had a whole pantheon. They also believed in household gods called lares and penates, who protected your home and family. Every house had a small shrine where you'd leave offerings. Some wine, a bit of food. It was a way of saying thank you for keeping things safe. I like that idea. Having little gods who live in your house and look out for you. It makes the house feel less empty. I live alone mostly. My cousin stays over sometimes when he's in town for work, but otherwise it's just me. And that's fine. I like the quiet. But sometimes it's too quiet, like the house is waiting for something. I don't have a shrine, but I do have a little wooden owl on the mantel that I say good morning to. It doesn't say anything back, but I think it appreciates the gesture. Maybe that's my household god. Romans also believed in ancestor worship. They kept wax masks of their ancestors and brought them out during funerals and parades. It was a way of saying, these people are still with us. They're still part of the family. My grandmother died when I was 12. I don't remember a lot about her, but I remember she made bread every Saturday. The whole house would smell like yeast and warmth. She'd give me a piece fresh from the oven with butter on it, and I'd eat it standing at the counter while she worked. I tried making bread once a few years ago. It didn't turn out great, too dense, but it smelled right, and for a minute I felt like she was there. I don't know if that's ancestor worship or just memory, but either way, it's something. One of my favorite Roman emperors is Hadrian. He ruled from 117 to 138 AD, and he's famous for building Hadrian's Wall across northern Britain to keep out the Picts, who were the people living in what's now Scotland. The wall is still there, parts of it. You can walk along it. I saw a documentary about it. Same narrator as the aqueduct one. Hadrian was also a poet and an architect, and he loved Greece. He spent a lot of time traveling around the empire, visiting provinces, talking to people, building things. He built the Pantheon. Well, rebuilt it, technically. The original burned down. Hadrian was married to a woman named Sabina, but he was in love with a young man named Antinous. They traveled together for years. Then Antinous drowned in the Nile under mysterious circumstances. Some people think it was an accident. Some think it was suicide. Some think it was a sacrifice, because there were prophecies that said someone close to the emperor had to die to ensure his health. Hadrian was heartbroken. He founded a city at the spot where Antinous drowned and named it Antinopolis. He commissioned hundreds of statues of Antinous. He declared him a god. There are more surviving statues of Antinous than almost anyone else from the ancient world. He has this sad, beautiful face. You can tell Hadrian loved him. I think about that sometimes. How love can make you build a city. How grief can make you carve someone's face in stone over and over, trying to bring them back. I was in love once. Her name was Emily. We dated for 2 years in our mid-20s. She worked at the library and had a laugh that made everyone around her start laughing too, even if they didn't know what was funny. We broke up because I didn't want to move to Minneapolis, and she did. She said long distance wouldn't work, and I said maybe we should try anyway. And she said, "Joe, you don't even like talking on the phone," which was true. She moved. I stayed. We said we'd keep in touch, but we didn't really. A few emails the first year, then nothing. I don't know where she is now. Probably still in Minneapolis, probably married, probably happy. I didn't build a city for her or carve her face in stone. I just think about her sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, and I hope she's okay. That's not the same as what Hadrian did, but it's something. Marcus Aurelius, who I mentioned earlier, was emperor from 161 to 180 AD. He's known as one of the 5 good emperors, which is a pretty good title to have. He wrote a book called Meditations, which is basically his personal journal. He never meant for anyone to read it. He was just writing notes to himself about how to be a good person and deal with stress and do his duty, even when he didn't feel like it. It's one of the most famous books in the world now. There's a passage where he writes, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil," which is a bleak way to start the day. But then he says, "But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, and so none of them can hurt me." I think about that when I'm at the grocery store and someone cuts in front of me in line, or when I'm driving and someone tailgates me even though I'm going the speed limit. None of them can hurt me. It helps a little. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength," which is good advice, but hard to follow. I can't control the weather or traffic, or whether my internet is working, or what other people think of me. I can only control how I respond, but responding calmly takes practice. Marcus Aurelius had a whole empire to run and wars to fight, and a son, Commodus, who turned out to be a terrible person and emperor. And still he wrote in his journal, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." I'm trying. Commodus is one of the most infamous emperors. He thought he was the reincarnation of Hercules. He fought in the Colosseum as a gladiator, which was not something emperors were supposed to do. He renamed Rome after himself, Colonia Commodiana. He was paranoid and cruel, and eventually he was assassinated by his own advisors, who had him strangled by a wrestler. It's a sad ending for Marcus Aurelius's line. He tried so hard to be good, and his son undid a lot of it, but I guess that's parenting. You do your best and hope it takes. The Colosseum, by the way, is probably the most famous Roman building. It could hold 50,000 people. They had awnings to provide shade and a system of tunnels under the floor where they kept animals and props and gladiators. Gladiator fights were a big deal. Some gladiators were slaves or prisoners, but some were volunteers who did it for money and fame. A really successful gladiator could become rich and famous, like a professional athlete today. People loved the spectacle, the drama, the danger. I don't think I could watch someone fight to the death even if they volunteered. It's too real. But I also watch MMA sometimes on TV, which is kind of the same thing, just with rules and referees. Maybe we haven't changed as much as we think. Romans also loved chariot racing. The Circus Maximus could hold 150,000 people. There were 4 teams, red, white, blue, and green, and people were fanatic about their team. There were riots. People died in stadium collapses. Emperors gave out free bread and tickets to keep people happy. Bread and circuses, they called it. It's where we get the phrase. I'm not really into sports, but I understand the appeal. It's nice to care about something that doesn't matter in the big scheme of things, to have a team and cheer for them and feel like you're part of something. I watch Jeopardy most nights. I don't root for anyone in particular, but I like seeing people be good at things. Romans had public baths, which were like community centers. You'd go to exercise, bathe, get a massage, meet friends, do business. They had hot rooms, cold rooms, swimming pools, libraries, gardens. It was very social. I don't think that would work in America. We're too private. We like our own bathrooms and our own space. But maybe we're missing out. There's a Finnish sauna at the Y in Marquette. I went once. It was just me and an older guy who didn't say anything. We sat there sweating for about 10 minutes. And then he said, "Hot enough for you?" And I said, "Yeah," and that was it. But it was nice in a way. Quiet company. Romans ate a lot of things we still eat. Bread, cheese, olives, fish, wine. But they also ate things we don't, like dormice and flamingo tongues and garum, which was a fermented fish sauce they put on everything. It was like ketchup. I can't imagine fermented fish sauce on everything, but tastes change. In 1,000 years, people will probably think it's weird that we ate hot dogs, or maybe hot dogs will still be around. They've made it this far. I had a hot dog yesterday from the gas station on County Road 510. They have a roller grill that's always going, and the hot dogs just roll and roll under the heat lamps until someone buys one. I don't know how long mine had been rolling, but it was good. I got it with mustard and relish and ate it in my truck in the parking lot while listening to the radio. Sometimes the best meals are the ones you don't think about too hard. Romans had a saying, "Carpe diem," seize the day. It's from a poem by Horace, a Roman poet. The full line is, "Carpe diem, quam minimum credula postero." Seize the day, put very little trust in tomorrow. People use it to mean live in the moment or take risks, which is fine. But I think Horace meant it more gently, like, don't spend all your time worrying about the future. Enjoy today. Tomorrow will come whether you trust it or not. That's harder than it sounds. I worry a lot about money, about whether I locked the door, about whether I'm wasting my life. But then I'll be driving home, and I'll see the sun setting behind the pines, and the sky turning pink and orange, and for a second I'll forget what I was worried about, and I'll think, this is enough. And it is. Another Roman poet, Virgil, wrote, "Love conquers all things. Let us too surrender to love." Virgil wrote the Aeneid, which is an epic poem about Aeneas, a Trojan hero who escapes the fall of Troy and eventually founds Rome. It's basically Roman fan fiction of Homer's Iliad. But it's beautiful. There's a part where Aeneas visits the underworld and sees his father's ghost, and his father shows him all the future Romans who'll be born from his line. And Aeneas cries because he's so moved. I cried the first time I read it too. I was in college and sitting in the library, and I had to pretend I had allergies. There's something about seeing the long arc of things. How one person's choice leads to another person's life, and on, until eventually you get to us. I don't know if I'll have kids. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm also 43 and single, so the window is closing. My mom keeps hinting that she'd like grandkids. She'll say things like, "The Johnsons' daughter just had twins," and then look at me meaningfully. I don't know what to tell her. It's not like I'm avoiding it on purpose, but maybe that's okay. Maybe not everyone is supposed to have kids. Maybe some of us are just supposed to be here, living our lives, doing our small part, and that's enough. The Romans valued family and legacy a lot, but they also valued duty and service, and friendship, and just being a decent person. I think I can manage that. There's a Roman concept called pietas, which doesn't translate perfectly to English. It means duty, devotion, loyalty to your family, your country, the gods. It's about doing what's right even when it's hard. Aeneas was the model of pietas. He left Troy even though he didn't want to. He went to Italy even though he didn't want to. He did his duty. I think about that when I'm shoveling snow or doing dishes or going to work on a Monday. I don't want to, but I do it anyway. That's pietas, I guess. Just smaller. The last thing I want to tell you about is something called the res gestae divi Augusti, the deeds of the divine Augustus. It's a first-person account written by Augustus near the end of his life, listing everything he did as emperor. He had it carved on bronze pillars outside his mausoleum, so everyone could read it. It's a little self-congratulatory. I did this, I did that, I was great. But it's also touching. He wanted people to remember him. He wanted his life to mean something. We all do, I think. At the end he wrote, "I found Rome a city of brick, and left it a city of marble. I don't know what I'll leave. Probably not much. A few friends who'll remember me. Maybe someone will find my copy of the daily life of ancient Rome at a yard sale and buy it and read it and think about the Romans the way I do. And maybe that's enough. It's late now, or early, depending on how you look at it. If you're still awake, that's okay. If you're asleep, that's okay too. I hope you had a good day today. I hope tomorrow is good too." The Romans had a phrase for that veil. It means be well. So, veil, be well. Good night.